there are certain expenses that are higher in some instances and lower in others. I can remember that we sat here one evening after midnight discussing one of our consultants. We spent $450,000 for a report. And are there other projects that we have assigned that same way? And if they are they in the budget? For instance, our curriculum and things that have been going on with that.
There were two different questions there, I think. One was about consultants and the other was about contracted services.
Yes.
As far as consultants, I'm trying to think, it's a broad spectrum. What things would you be considering consultants? The things that are in there, we have the educational equity consultant that was just approved as part of the OCR agreement. So that's built into next year's budget. The only other one that I'm thinking of offhand is some of the other schools that we're partnering with, both in setting up Montrose as well as some services that we get with special ed. So the Morris Union Jointure Commission, which we're a member of that commission, they've been providing some services, so that's built into there. And then we're doing a partnership with Montclair State, which we've been doing as an ongoing. That's still built into that budget. So those are the consulting type things that are built in. In terms of contracted services, we look at that regularly, and in fact, it had come up at the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting this past week that we're getting into that mode where we go in and we review the contracting services. We review it on a regular basis. We're watching what's happening with how the services are being provided. We do regular surveys to get feedback on them, but we also, of course, look at them financially. In the past, and we look at it every year to see what's happening, we've saved substantial amounts of money by contracting out. Mainly it comes into the health care area. And what we'll do again this year, we take the number of staff that we have and we do an analysis of if they were on guide with what our agreement is with the union for those positions, what it would cost us if it was our own staff. And we'll do that analysis. I will say that the last time I did the analysis, which was as I was developing the budget, some of the savings are not as extreme as they used to be, and I think what's happening there is because with the Affordable Care Act, now some of the staffing that was done outside of the district getting health benefits, we're getting health benefits, but maybe not to the level we were getting them, but with health benefits becoming more expensive for the contracted services too, we're starting to see where it's not as big of a gap as we used to have. So we're not having as extreme of a savings as I used to find when I do the analysis, but we still are seeing a savings. And all of that, again, will be coming to the Finance Committee over the next 2 months as we're getting ready to look at what we're doing for bidding out for next year.
It's nice to know that we're getting savings in some areas. Now, in terms of the curriculum schedule, that caused a lot of people, a lot of students, to be hurt because it was done wrong, and we paid to do it wrong. And we didn't do it for free. What are we doing to correct those kinds of things in terms of our inexperience in those areas?
We have...
Mr. Mellon?
I assume you're referring to the middle school?
Yeah, the curriculum and scheduling, the schedule problem in the curriculum, yes.
Is there a budget question?
We are...
I'm asking questions. I'm just asking questions
I know, but we're having a discussion
we've
on the
spent
budget.
money.
There's a budget question, I think.
Yeah, well,
they should answer it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what is the budget question?
We've spent money because we hired a consultant to come in and correct that problem, and it still isn't corrected. That's the budget question. What are we doing when we're... Why should we directing this?
I think that consultant was hired
Mr. Mellon
for next
was
year's
giving
schedule.
a response, and Ms. Schneider can enlighten us to the extent there's a cost.
I thought
implication
the
here.
board voted to hire the consultant to fix the problem.
Right, to work on next year.
Oh, so that's why it's still not done. We hired the consultant for next year, but we didn't hire the consultant to fix the problem that we had here. But it's a budget question.
modifying the schedule for next year so we don't have the issues that we had this year.
So we didn't hire the person to do that for this year, even so it's still
Next year.
broken.
I see what you're asking. Are we fixing this current school year, or is the consultant for the next year? Got it.
Is that a budget question or no?
Not really, but that's okay. We should answer it.
It's a budget question to me, who's talking about money and hiring people.
In terms of the budget answer, I do not have anything
Okay.
budgeted for next year to hire anyone to do scheduling
Excellent.
for us. We're just, again, not having known the question ahead of time, we're all trying to make sure that we're talking about the same consultant that you were talking about and what they were being hired for. That would have been out of this year's budget, so there was nothing budgeted for next year.
Okay, and my very last, question about the budget is we're doing a lot of restructuring of the administration. And in all of this restructuring that we're doing, I know we're waiting to do central office. Are we saving restructuring? Are we saving any money at all?
There's the equivalent of 1 FTE at the high school level because the supervisors will each be teaching one class.
And and how do we come up with this? That's another question, no time.
Well, there's also the reduction of one central office
And
staff.
there's the reduction of one central office.
That's right. There's also the reduction of one central office staff. So that is
Right,
one of the
that's the
reductions in
retirement.
FTEs.
Right?
But it's not being refilled, therefore the burden of all the work that goes on in central office will be shared across less people.
I was thinking about with the restructuring, with the new superintendent coming in, maybe he would like to do that if we get somebody with experience, because we are so inexperienced, at the top, to allow them to make those kinds of changes and things to staff. That's a huge undertaking. Policy and all of those things come into play, job postings and, reapplying and things
I
of that
believe Ms.
nature.
Schneider in her presentation just mentioned that that's a placeholder in the budget right now that we look forward, if we do have a new superintendent, for that person to be involved in that restructuring.
Okay, so good. So we're not going to restructure until the new superintendent gets here.
Right.
I'm talking about central office.
Central office.
But we're restructuring, wow, whew. Okay.
Other questions for Ms. Schneider on the budget? Any other board members? Mr. Beck?
More from Mrs. Gerson. So I'm very disappointed that we have to eliminate elementary school foreign language, although I accept the administration's rationale. I was wondering though, since we are freeing up one period per week because we're not introducing kids to Spanish anymore, is there anything in particular we're going to be having teachers do with the kids in that time?
In grades 3 to 5, that's where we had world language, and that was a preparation period for them. But there's also library, so library time, which is dedicated to research mainly, that will be the teacher's preparation period.
So more library time.
Yes. Well, the same. Actually, it's one period a week, as it has been. They have library one period a week in grades 3 to 5, and the teacher stays with the class. Now it will be a preparation period for them in place of world language.
And rather than the world language teacher coming into the class once a week, that won't happen. So there'll be additional time for instruction in the regular classroom.
Okay, but nothing like it. Thank you.
So to clarify, the student actually will have more time in the classroom because the net for that student is that they're not going to that world
Well, they
language.
never went. The teacher came into
Well,
the
but
room. So
that period
they'll
of
be with
time
their,
will be with their teacher.
They'll be with their
Right.
teacher, correct.
And you're replacing the prep time
Yes.
for the teacher
Correct.
to make sure
Yes.
that's covered.
Okay, anything else now? Remember, we'll have a second time for discussion after public speaks, okay?
Oh, goody.
Okay, seeing no further questions now, and thank you very much, Ms. Schneider. I want to turn it over to The public, we have a sign-up sheet, I believe, for tonight. And while we get that, the usual notes briefly, we highly, highly value your input. As we well know, I see a number of experienced faces, but for any of you who are new to this process, and for all of us, this is not a time for dialogue, but it is a very important time for you to share a comment. We will not discuss personnel matters, discipline, other confidential matters, obviously. And while we don't directly engage in colloquy, your comments are very important. And please keep your remarks brief. With luck, we won't have the formal need to, whatever, any more than we had with ourselves. But we try to hold ourselves accountable as much as we can. We want you to be brief in your remarks, and we really appreciate them. Thank you very much. Okay, first on our list, Tia Swanson of Seth Boyd, or in relation to Seth Boyd. And please state your town as usual.
South Orange. We all know that Seth Boyden has heroic teachers and an involved administration and committed parents. Yes, please. All who work together to make it a school of which we all can be proud. Despite educating a much higher percentage of children on free and reduced lunch than any other elementary school in the district, it is not a focus school. And indeed, when compared with other children across the district, Seth Boyden students do fairly well. But the task, to use the word again, Herculean, and over the long term, unsustainable. And the achievement gap is as noticeable at our school as it is everywhere else in the district. The question I think we have to ask ourselves is why? Why, despite the fact that we are all committed to equity, does our school system fail to bridge the very real economic and social divides that exist in these towns? Why are we failing? I think research would back me up on this, that we have not committed the resources we need to make the difference. We thank you that you have agreed to add back another teacher to us. And we also thank you for the additional reading interventionists. But that's simply not enough. In keeping with your own policy, the policy is 23.12, that gives the superintendent discretion for class size when extenuating circumstances are involved, and I would argue that free and reduced lunch of 43% is an extenuating circumstance. We ask that you pledge to keep classes at Seth Boyden as small as possible, certainly well under the district maximums. And in addition, that when circumstances warranted, you consider placing second adults in some classes, particularly in the early grades. We know that many of our students come to kindergarten unprepared to do the work of kindergarten. They start out behind and they stay behind. If we can catch them then, just think. I mean, it's amazing to think what we can do.
Yes.
It should be noted, I think, that several of our kindergarten and first grade sessions are at maximum capacity this year. That's 22 students. I think there are at least 3. But there are some extra classrooms available for next year if we need to break that down. It is also well documented that students from poorer homes face more stresses. So I would ask that you consider making our social worker, who is now 4 days a week at our school, a full-time member of the Seth Boyden staff. He has more than enough work to occupy him. And last, because I am a dreamer, and because at least once a month I dream about how I might get my hands on $10,000 to give Seth Boyden students who haven't seen the ocean or the Hudson River or New York City a chance to go to those places, I ask you for $10,000 for field trips for our kids. I was looking at some data today. It is true that these 2 towns are very highly taxed, but it is also true that we are very wealthy. New Jersey is the second wealthiest state in the nation, and both Maplewood and South Orange's median household incomes are well above New Jersey's average. The median family income in South Orange is nearly $159,000 a year. In Maplewood, it is slightly lower than that, but still twice the national average. South Orange's is 2.5 times the national average. Your budget raises the average tax bill in these towns by between 0.1 and 0.175% of those incomes. That's nothing. You're not